and welcome to another edition of the Lose Your Mind podcast, where we talk about all things mindfulness. If you've been listening to us, you'll know that we've been talking about the mindful attitudes. And this week we're going to talk about non-judgment. So I'm here with Kelly, who's going to open up with a few words, few choice and chosen words of wisdom about the attitude of non-judgment. So take it away, Kelly.
Thank you, Alan. I will do. So in the words of John Kabat-Zinn, he expresses non-judgment as judgments of mind tend to dominate our minds and make it hard for us to ever find any peace. By becoming an impartial witness to our experience, we become aware of our habitual judgments and reactions. Knowing what we can do allows space for a new response. So it's quite interesting what he says there, because just by talking about non-judgment itself, this could lead you into many different things when you think about it. But he's saying here that by bringing awareness to the way we judge things, we can really choose our responses more wisely. Would you agree?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting definition that you've just come up with there, because it says so many things that are, yep, that's mindfulness, that's mindfulness, that's mindfulness. And it's almost like a bingo, isn't it, of things that mindfulness is. But yeah, and it is, I always think if I were to explain mindfulness in an elevator pitch to anybody, in 20 seconds, it would be, well, it just gives you the headspace and awareness to be able to choose your responses. Because as humans, we tend to leap in off the deep end, don't we? And react rather than respond properly in lots of ways. So I think this one's interesting because I think it's, judgment is one of those things that we are wired to do, aren't we? And we have to think and say all the time, I like this, I don't like that. And, we have to make judgments. If you say, how are you? You have to respond to that in a judgmental way, but I'm okay or I'm not okay. All those kind of things. I think we're just judging all the time, and I don't think that will ever change in a sense, because we have to know what's good, what's bad. We have to know what's moral or immoral, or all those kind of things. But to be aware of it, as that definition says, is such a good thing, because it just gives you the chance to change those habitual thoughts.
Yeah, I think you're right there, because our power is in our response a lot of the time, isn't it? If we sort of steamroller in without having awareness or creating that space, we don't really think things through properly, and we can get caught up in a way where we are making judgments of things without really stopping. And when you think about mindfulness as a whole and meditation, essentially, a lot of people, and I think we've discussed this before, but they don't want to do meditation because they've already placed a judgment on it, thinking that they've got to sit down quietly for a really long period of time, that it's going to absorb hours and hours out of their day, and if their head's not clear, they're not doing it right. So before they've even tried it, they've already judged the situation and possibly thought, it's not for me, I can't fit that in. But what we're saying is, and why we've decided to break down the attitudes right at the very start of our podcast journey, is so that people understand that these different elements, by just looking into them a little bit more, it helps you naturally become more mindful and be able to absorb yourself in things in a far healthier way for you to process things. I think, anyway, that's what I've got out of it, because I judge myself a lot, and I've been guilty of judging other people and situations in my lifetime, and sometimes without any cause to do so. But it's only because we're always racing to get an answer or get to the next thing. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's unrealistic, isn't it, to not judge. You can't go through life just not judging, and we'd be foolish to say that. We can't just sit in this ivory tower and say, oh, I'm not going to judge this or that or the other. But I think where it does help is, like the definition says, be aware of your judging and be aware of what those filters might be. because I think the exciting thing about mindfulness is always that it might just open your mind to some new revelation, some new epiphany, simply because you just take off all those old layers that you had and then start to see something new. And I think that's where this attitude can be really, really helpful. And not only that, aren't people boring that keep talking about opinions that you know what opinions that they're going to say, and you know it yourself? You probably hear your own opinions in your own mind, whether it's about politics or whatever it is, and you probably bore yourself, thinking about that. I know I do. But so it's just good to be aware of what they are, try and just step back from it, and have an open mind.
Yeah, I think sometimes though, people feel like they've got to make judgments to get somewhere, almost like it's a security thing. So, if you've got an opinion about something, or you've made a decision and you've made a judgment call, if you like, on whatever the thing is, I think it makes people feel safer if they're coming from that place. So the most natural thing for us to do really is be mindful. But we cloud ourselves with this stuff all the time, don't we? So we're like pro be mindful. We teach mindfulness and the importance of it, but we come into this world quite mindful without all these things attached. And it's only as we go along and let these things come in that it clouds our vision. So by creating this space and sort of baby steps, really just going backwards, so much comes to you and you get so much benefit when you are in the present moment. And there's the story, isn't there, that we learn when we go through the mindfulness training about the girl that walks down the road. Do you remember that one? So, you could walk past someone on the street, someone you know well, and they might ignore you. So straight away, you might think, oh, that's rude. Oh, thanks a lot. If you say hello and they don't say hello back. But in that person's life that day, their dog might have just died, or they might have just lost their job, or they might be facing a challenging time, but you've already judged them as rude without even knowing the situation at all. So
Yeah.
I think it's important, just like it said, to come back to that space where you're not doing that all the time. And it's natural that you're going to end up slipping back in there. I mean, it's hard not to. It's just the natural way, isn't it? And in some ways, I suppose it can be healthy to judge certain scenarios. But when you're trying to be present, or even try something new like meditation, like I touched on earlier, it's important not to put the pressures on yourself, because there is no need for it, really.
You're right. There is no need for it. Two things I was going to say on what you just said, just to build on it. Yeah, you say about having an opinion. I remember, back when I had a proper job, and I always remember that if you're in a meeting, you were kind of pinned down as to what is your opinion, which side are you on, which side of the fence. You must have an opinion. If you didn't have an opinion, it didn't look like you were trying hard enough. And I think so very often we are encouraged to jump to conclusions without knowing all the facts. And I know we can never know all the facts, but we can do a bit better at that. But I think there's a difference between having an opinion that's considered and just being non-judgmental in the moment, or being judgmental in the moment. So I hope that's not too confusing what I've just said. But the other thing, to build on what you said about the girl walking down the street, is that we have this tendency to make up those stories, to fill in the gaps when we don't know all the details. And if we can only just stop ourselves doing that, that'd be so beneficial to our mental health, wouldn't it? Because that example where, oh, well, they're rude, or I must have done something, or, whatever it is not good for your well-being. So why do we do it? We should stop doing it. It's a trick of the mind that we just need to try and curb sometimes.
Yeah, we should. And it's from that place, like you say, when you give yourself a hard time and then you put yourself in that position, that you build bad mental health, don't you? You start becoming anxious, or you can feel low. And then all different scenarios can trigger. I mean, I've got family members permanently worrying about what they've said and what other people think of them all the time unnecessarily. And it causes just high level of anxiety. And it's no way to live, really, because at the end of the day, everyone just wants to be happy, right? That's the goal, or for me anyway, just want to be happy. It doesn't matter how you get there, but to feel that happiness, you've got to accept certain things for what they are. And I think when you come to that place, you draw in naturally what's meant for you. Quite often we are blocking things because we're placing judgments all the time on how we think we should be and what we should be doing. I mean, I've written a blog, not published it yet, but about the word should. It's a new pet hate word of mine,
Oh, right.
because people are often talking about what they should be doing. And I know that this is a frequently used word. I do use it all the time myself. But I think when you use the word should, you're setting a level of expectation on something you think you should be doing, because you've got a judgment of where you think you should be. So it's all these kind of shoulds and shouldn'ts and do's and don'ts and, this and that. But I don't think people give themselves enough slack just to relax, be present, switch off, and just enjoy what they're doing enough, because it's looked upon in society that you should always be on the go and be doing more and be getting to the next thing. But again, that's where the judgments come in. You place them on yourself, don't you? That you don't feel you're good enough, or I haven't done enough today, or I should have really got that washing done, or I should have done a bit more or a bit less, or it just goes on, and everyone can relate to being under pressure. But by sitting from a space where you can choose your responses to what you're doing, it doesn't matter where you are today. If you're where you are, aren't you? And tomorrow's a new day and you can start again. So I think, like with the other attitudes, I mean, they all come into one, but and come together quite nicely to bring us to a point of being mindful. But we just need to cultivate the awareness of where we are, and just not put pressure on. Like, non-judgment for me is almost non-pressure, because I feel pressurized a lot of the time. And I think by not judging so much, I feel a bit less pressured in my own life to be able to not give myself a hard time if I haven't got to where I think I should be. Because I've used it again, that should. It's like should be, like, but should you be anywhere? I mean, we are where we are. Wherever you go, there you are. As he says again, Jon Kabat-Zinn.
That's true. Yes, I'm holding up the book itself. Wherever you go, there you are, by Jon Kabat-Zinn. But yeah, you're right. And I love that way of looking at it. Non-judgment is non-pressure. It's all about the expectations we put on ourselves and others, isn't it? So if we lower that bar, actually, you become less judgmental by definition. And yeah, you're right about the should word. So, and I know I've just been reading a book on mental health and the cognitive behavioral therapy section in there. And, hearing that language that you say to yourself, oh, I should, as you said, I should be doing more, or I should be doing less, is very damaging. And if you hear that word should, it should be like a red flag to you. Is it, well, should I? And maybe you question it. And if you should be doing, you should have put the laundry on, fine, but at least it gives you that little bit of, as we always say, that little bit of chance to step back and reassess your responses. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the time, I think it's we worry about what other people think about us.
Yes.
I mean, you think about your own home, for example. You're sat at home. If you haven't put the stuff in the dishwasher or haven't put the washing away, if you're there on your own, it's no real big deal, is it? But if someone were to turn up at the door straight away, you'd think, oh, what would other people think if my house looked in this state? I mean, I'm personally not bothered, but I'm okay with it. But I'm just saying the pressures come from external factors a lot of the time, don't they? If you're there on your own, a lot of these things don't matter. I mean, if you have a lay-in in the morning, I mean, I didn't get out of bed the other day. This isn't a usual thing, but till midday, just because I wasn't asleep.
Well,
but I just
no judgment here.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought, but a lot of people might think, oh, that's a bit lazy.
Yeah, look at her
doing a bit more. I've got 2 kids at home, but we'd been away all week, and I thought, do you know what? I just want to lay here. I read my book, had a cup of coffee, and I just didn't get up. but I was quite happy with that. But 5 years ago, I would have given myself a hard time all afternoon about that, because I'd have judged myself as a not good enough mum, or but I needed a few hours, and that was fine.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, you should feel okay about that, but then I'd be using the word should,
I
which we
do
just
feel
which we
okay.
just banned. So I'm glad about that. That's good. All right. So there's clearly loads of layers to this, isn't there? And loads of dimensions. So, I hope we're giving, some thoughts and ideas to how people can think about this. But you are right. I mean, the reality is we're judged as well, and very often we'd be naive to think that even our friends don't talk about us behind our backs. Oh, look at the state of, Kelly's kitchen. My God, it's gonna happen, isn't it? Not that I've seen your kitchen. I'm sure it's perfectly clean. But yeah, the reality is they're going to do it. We can separate ourselves a little bit and help ourselves, because it's about us within, isn't it? Not necessarily what anybody else is doing. So how do we give, as we usually do, if not always, practical tips on how to be non-judgmental then?
Well, I think the important thing for people to take away from this attitude is, I do like to use the word pressure,
Mm,
is not to pressurize themselves so much. So if someone feels they've got a lot going on, and they just wonder, oh, how can I bring mindfulness to this, or what can I do to not have all these things building up on me, it's just to take a step back, just like you said at the beginning, choose their response, and not really worry about what other people think, because, or even the thoughts that may arise about themselves, because we all are living different lives, and everyone's got their own story, and with different things going on, and nobody knows what other people are facing. They may look perfectly fine on the outside, but if you don't get something done in a day, or you don't feel that you want to be in a job you're in but you feel like you should do, or there's other things that you feel that you should be exploring, or things that you just simply don't want to do anymore, like being invited out for dinner, for example. I've got quite a few people I know that can't bear going out for dinner in social situations.
mm-hmm.
I personally love it, but they don't. So that's fine, isn't it? Like, they shouldn't have to go if they don't want to go, because all they're worried about is what the other people will think. If it's something that they don't want to do, I think everybody just needs to be able to take control of their own self and know that it's okay just to be where you are. So the tips to do this would be just stopping, thinking about where they are in the moment, and coming back to meditation, even just taking a couple of breaths out, because when we feel overwhelmed, it's quite a scary place to be, isn't it? When you're caught in that loop, and people have social anxiety, I'm referring to this dinner scenario, or health anxiety, or whatever it is, people might be struggling in their jobs. And when all this judgment comes in on what you should or shouldn't be doing, that favorite word again arises, you get stuck in the loop. So it's just unraveling. And we know that meditation takes away problems. It doesn't give you anything. I've said this before. It's like my favorite line ever when I talk about it. What does it bring to you? Nothing. It's what it takes away. So it will
That's a
take
good one.
away the noise, take away the stress. And I think by taking time out and not putting those judgments on yourself, gradually over time, you build up a resilience, if you like, to be able to be more present and happier. So that's what I would say. I hope that wasn't too garbled. Feel free to dissect that if you may.
No, I think it was very clear, and you're right. It's about taking pressure off yourself. I just got a slightly different angle on it, which is a way I think of just cultivating the attitude itself, which is think about whether you're liking or disliking something, but try and cut through that. And for example, I mean, a couple of examples I have are, if you think judgmentally about a person, whether it be a friend or somebody you don't like or whatever, if you can train yourself to step back and say, why am I thinking that? And is that thing I'm thinking about them, is that their whole persona? Am I just defining them in that way? Because when you get to think about it, you actually realize that, we're all the same. We're all basically the same. We're all just trying to get by in life. And yeah, you might judge somebody for whatever trivial reason, but they're a human being and there's a lot more to them than you're thinking about them, probably. And very often you judge them because of something they've done to you or not done to you. Right. And that's egocentrical thinking, isn't it? It's like, well, I'm judging them by my standards. Well, maybe I should just step back and say they're my standards, not theirs. So they're entitled to have their own. And I think that's it. I think when you sit down and meditate, if you can think of something like, so let's say you hear a noise and we meditate on sound, or you meditate on a sensation, and you say, am I liking this or disliking it? And is there any need to do either? Or do I just receive the sensation and that's it? And then once you've broken it down and analyzed it for what it actually is, not what you think it is, then you start again. You have a new blank canvas. So the thing, I'm glad. The thing I like about it is, I think it can be really exciting to start thinking in new ways, and free yourself from those boring old things that you think all the time. And you get sick of the sound of your own voice in your own head. And I think that's the exciting thing about this for me, is just being fresh and open and new.
I think that's great. I like it. I also, I appreciate what you said there a lot, because I do think when you come from this place, it does open you up to so many more new possibilities. Because we've spoken about beginner's mind, haven't we? Which ties in, but you kind of got
Exactly.
new eyes and you look at it in a new way. So hopefully that's given everyone a few tips on how
I hope
to
so.
place judgment on everything, really. And for that, be a freer, happier soul.
That's what it's all about. So good. So I hope you've enjoyed listening to this episode on non-judgment, and we'll be back next time for one of the other attitudes too. So we look forward to speaking to you then. Bye for now.